I think the Genius Act is passing this summer. I don't think this is on a slow burn. I think this is on a fast burn. I think the market structure bill is going to happen this year too. It's game on. This is the year the planets all came together. It was coming, but this is the year it has happened. It's reflected at the highest levels of politics. Like if you go to Washington to the blockchain conference, I think 1 out of 10 people there was from Congress. Going forward, we don't see two worlds, we see one world. So anybody who's bridging that gap, like bridge, that's what we're investing in.
Oh, I'd love to hear that. Hey, what's going on, family and friends? Here we are back at XRP Las Vegas 2025, the largest XRP dedicated event in the world, catering to retail investors. And I had the absolute privilege of sitting down with none other than Greg Kidd. Now, for those of you who don't know, Greg is no ordinary guest. He's an early investor and former executive at Ripple, early investor in Coinbase, Twitter, Square, Link2, and now he's the owner of Vast Bank, where he's helping redefine how we think about banking, tokenization, and financial inclusion through blockchain. But this conversation hits a little differently for me. I've been fortunate to collaborate with Greg and the Hard Yaka team on several occasions, including live coverage at the 2025 US presidential inauguration, where we helped bring fintech voices to the national stage. We've also crossed paths at multiple investor conferences, both here in the States and overseas, and I've long admired Mr. Kidd's vision. But our first connection goes back further, way back to 2021, when I was just getting started as an accredited investor on the Link2 platform. I asked Greg a couple heartfelt questions during a Zoom webinar, and that first interaction stuck with me. I was a fan then, and I'm an even bigger fan now. And today, full circle, we're here together in Las Vegas, diving deep into the next era of banking and digital assets. In this exclusive interview, Greg and I cover what deposit tokens are and why they're more capital efficient than stablecoins, why Vast Bank is putting US dollars directly on chain using the XRP Ledger, how tokenized fiat enables 24/7 borderless banking, and why bipartisan support of the Genius Act signals a regulatory turning point, and why Greg sees the tokenization of $420 trillion in real-world assets unfolding with XRP positioned front and center. So with that being said, let's play this exclusive interview with the billionaire himself, Greg Kidd. Thanks for tuning in. Love you mucho. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we're here at the XRP Las Vegas conference, the largest XRP conference in the world, and we probably have the most important man in the room standing right next to me, Greg Kidd, who just came up off stage sharing some exciting information about deposit tokens and a lot of things around Vast Bank and the XRPL. How you doing today, Greg?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me today, sir. So, you were mentioning deposit tokens up on stage, which is a new product being launched through Vast Bank. What's that all about?
So everybody knows about stablecoins. Mm-hmm. Stablecoins have an issuer, and then the money sits at a bank somewhere. But what happens if banks just issue fiat money on chain directly?
Yeah.
That's a deposit token. And so it's like a stablecoin. It just has FDIC insurance. It can pay interest. It has consumer protections, same technology, but without the middleman.
So what does that mean for us digital asset investors?
Well, it just means everybody in the world can have the equivalent of a US dollar deposit account or whatever currency is issued on chain. So it means everybody's going to be operating with money on chain and with full insurance, all the protections, all the benefits of being in the banking system. So it means that the most important real world asset, a bank deposit, is now going to be on chain.
Yeah. Question. I'm trying to bridge the gap here because yesterday Uphold announced their new direct deposit feature. And I asked Simon actually across the hall here on another interview, exclusive interview. And I asked him, with the launch of USBC's deposit token, is that the potential, the resources or the technology required or in order to facilitate that last mile?
Look, it's all the same technology under the hood. In the United States, the only company or the only organization that can actually hold a deposit is a bank. So anything else under current law has to have behind it somewhere a bank. Okay. And so whatever product, whatever stable coin, if it's going to be in US dollars, there's always a bank somewhere. All we're saying is if there were banks that were willing to work with chain directly, life would be simpler. And the reason I bought Vast Bank was just for that simplification.
Now, what kind of impact will this have on stablecoin issuers like Circle, who is already in the landscape without that FDIC protection that you have?
That's right. So a lot of people Stablecoins are fine, and they're not that worried about the FDIC insurance. They're not worried about consumer protection. They got their big boy pants on, and they're just ready to rock and roll with it. Or like Tether, which has pretty good liquidity for TradeFi. So there's always going to be uses for stablecoins, but for folks that are kind of like maybe a little bit more gun shy, having a bit of protection. So if you like lose your keys or somebody steals your money, you want to get it back, or the issuer goes under, the fact that the FDIC is there might make some folks sleep better at night.
Yeah, I'm sure. Now, within this space, could you I don't want to ask what's keeping you up at night, but would you mind sharing what's keeping you up at night with all the still uncertainty around the regulatory landscape? We are on the cusp of the implementation or the institution of the Genius Act, Market Infrastructure Bill, but without the regulations, what is keeping you up at night?
Well, election cycles are 4 years. And so I'm trying to make sure that the consensus behind things like the Genius Act isn't a one-party movement. And I think it's very significant. In the Genius Act, 16 Democrats also voted along with Republicans. So if we make this change toward digital assets in a bipartisan way, I don't think we're going to have this seesaw thing that when one administration comes and another goes, the law is going to change. So there's a lot of chaos out there in other areas, but in this issue, Republicans and some Democrats have gotten together, and I think that's going to be a long-term working coalition, and I support that.
Do you think that we're going to see those regulations come into the fold by the end of this year, 2025, or sometime in 2026?
I think the Genius Act is passing this summer. I don't think this is on a slow burn. I think this is on a fast burn. I think the market structure bill is going to happen this year too. It's game on.
It is game on, and it's happening all right here at the XRP Las Vegas conference. Before I let you go, Greg, you mentioned up on stage, you're investing into many companies. Sometimes you don't even know the name of the company, but of some of the companies that you're familiar of, what are some of those companies that are exciting you the most right now? You don't need a name drop, but what type of use cases are exciting you or business models?
For us, it's anything that's going to basically subsume the traditional legacy mainstream banking system into the world of DeFi, blockchain, distributed ledger. So going forward, we don't see two worlds, we see one world. So anybody who's bridging that gap, like Bridge, that's what we're investing in.
I'd love to hear that. Shifting gears, last question. What are your thoughts on the future of social media and platforms like X? There's talks about X becoming something like the everything app we see over across seas. What are your thoughts?
Well, we do think that, like, when you look at WeChat in China, it's a great model, but it only really works in China, maybe one or two other countries. We do see scope for a super app where messaging and money and all your credentials are attached to your identity. And whether that comes out of social media, whether it comes from the creepy world of Mark Zuckerberg.
Mark, are the allegations true that you're secretly a lizard? I'm gonna have to go with no on that.
Or the kind of freaky world of Elon. Somebody's going to crack that, and so we think that's inevitable. I'd like to see it happen on a global basis as opposed to having all these little fiefdom islands. So if like WhatsApp actually became like a payments app, it's a little scary, but it would be pretty damn handy because pretty much like something like that works on a global basis would have the penetration and impact of what WeChat has done in China, but we want to see it happen on a global basis.
Well said, Greg. For those in the audience who were unable to attend this grand XRP Las Vegas conference, what would you say to those in the audience?
Wow, this is the year the planets all came together. It was coming, but this is the year it has happened. It's reflected at the highest levels of politics. Like if you go to Washington to the blockchain conference, I think 1 out of 10 people there was from Congress. So this is no longer a geek thing in Silicon Valley. This is in New York. This is in Washington, D.C. This is worldwide. It's happened this year. We're over the tipping point.
We're over the tipping point, but Greg, you're at the tip of the spear here, sir. So thank you very much for sharing your time with me. And for those in the audience, be sure to follow Greg. He's a visionary. Greg, what's the best way for those in the audience to follow you as a leader in the space?
Just Greg Kidd on twitter.com or Twitter. Yes.
Excellent.
I'm sorry. I guess that's X now,
X
but I'm an old Twitter hand, so it's still Twitter to me.
I feel the love and sentiment in regards to that, because you have been around X for quite some time.
Well, Jack was living with me when he started Twitter. So yeah, I'd say I'm user number 62, which means I didn't really get it or I would have been user number 2. So it took me a while to figure out how to set it up.
Oh my goodness. Well, regardless, Greg, you're still the smartest man in this room. Appreciate you sharing your time with me, and safe travels to wherever you're heading next.
Alrighty, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Thank you, Greg. You as well, Greg. Thank you so much.
All right.
That means a lot to me. Thank you. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
What an incredible interview that was. Not every day do you get to interview and learn from billionaires moving the needle on policy, innovation, and finance. Since my interview with Greg Kidd, the owner of Vast Bank, former Ripple chief officer, current director of Global ID, and founder of Hard Yaka, Greg has taken over as CEO and chairman of the public company No Labs, ticker symbol KNW, acquiring a controlling stake in the company with his 1,000 Bitcoin and cash. His plan is to launch a public Bitcoin treasury strategy while driving innovation in non-invasive health technology. This is a bold step, blending fintech, digital assets, and healthcare. The future is on chain, ladies and gentlemen. Here's a few more powerful clips of Greg Kidd up on stage at the XRP Las Vegas conference, unveiling some interesting insights about remittances if the value were to never leave a global and public ledger, including the XRP Ledger. He makes me feel like he sees an even bigger picture brewing, merging the TradFi and DeFi ecosystems into one, encouraging capital efficiencies across many industries. Here we go.
If that money never leaves being a dollar, never leaves the country, never even leaves the bank, is that a remittance? I don't think so. I think in this new world, if everything is on Ledger, including the XRP Ledger, and it's just moving on Ledger, what does it mean anymore to move money from one country to another? It doesn't really happen. It just all stays on Ledger. And it's the XRP Ledger that made that possible all the way back in 2012. That's really why I joined Ripple to this day. And so buying a bank and putting US dollars on, we've also made an investment in the Bank of London, and I'm closing a bank deal in Europe soon. So that means dollars, pounds, and euros running 24/7 bank money on chain. So any developer can use any ledger, but it means your money stays with you wherever you go. So any application you use, when you connect with your identity, the money, and this is US dollars, full bank US dollars, not some euro dollar or Fuduzi dollar, but actual US bank dollars moving on chain. So it's kind of like you came here to the casino and you bought poker chips, and they don't just work at every table for every game. They work at every casino, and you know what? They work at 7-Eleven, not just here, but anywhere around the world. So it's the true big kahuna of tokenization.
Mm-hmm. Talking a lot about stablecoin legislation right now. Tell me how this is different to a dollar-backed stablecoin, and what makes your products better.
Sure. So we're real friendly with the stablecoin legislation and the stablecoin issuers. The difference between a stablecoin and a deposit token is stablecoins, when they're issued by, whether it's Circle or Tether or Ripple, whoever it is, those have to be backed one for one, which sounds like a good thing, and it is a good thing. But in a world where everything's backed one for one, it's kind of like the gold standard. What banks do that's different is banks take that money and they put it to work. They use it for credit formation. So if the whole world went to stablecoins, there would be no credit in the world because everything would be backed one for one. You could blend it out. Mm-hmm. So we use the same technology as a stablecoin, but we're 8 times more capital efficient because we can put that money to work. Now, if you do a bad job at putting it to work, you get in trouble. And when you get in trouble, that's where the FDIC insurance comes in. So we can actually have and be part of the fractional banking system, but still using the same technology as stablecoins, but with the liberty to make that money put to work much more capitally efficiently. And what does that mean? It means we can pay interest. I think, in the stablecoin legislation, they are forbidden
to
pay interest. And so we can pay interest, and we can obviously give that to the end user, but we can also share it with all the other developers and folks. So it's an ecosystem that pays interest, has insurance, has consumer protections. Again, we will have cross liquidity with the stable coins, but the stable coins are kind of like can sit in a non-custodial wallet without identity, and that's okay until they kind of get stolen or a bomb goes off. So we will coexist with the stablecoin world. But I actually think the world of, I think there's about $420 trillion of assets in the world. And so tokenizing all those assets and bringing it on chain onto like the XRP Ledger, just a huge opportunity, and we're right in position number one for that. Kind of a genie out of the bottle thing, and I think some of the industries that have not been able to get banked are like the cannabis industry,
Right.
et cetera, whatnot, and once you normalize those industries and people kind of see that it's okay, we bank them, and the world didn't come to an end. It may be a fight we have to fight in the future. Part of the reason I'm still in politics now is to make sure there's not a new shame list of people and industries that can't get banked. And when I say banked, I mean really get access to fiat currency running on chain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
How are you still involved in politics?
So I ran for the congressional seat, the 2nd district here in Nevada.
Yep.
Previously, I'm now working on legislation to create a new form of a bank charter. It's focused only on deposits and payments, no branches, no lending. Basically, I would continue to promote legislation. So a company like Ripple could actually get a bank license, right? And so, not saying that they want to, I'm not, but we're going to make it such that banks no longer have a monopoly on banking. Banking should be accessible. So think digital wallets, think remittance companies, could be retailers. Like all of those should be able to be. And I believe that in the future, not the very far out future, but the cost and price of payments, because the cost and price of payments is almost zero on the XRP Ledger. There's no reason that payments shouldn't be universally accessible and the price charge should be zero. It's like a public good. And that means banking is just basically like breathing the air. And so the concept that there'd be a limited group of folks that got into that club, I mean, during the Biden administration, I think only 2 licenses fell into the hands of someone who was already a bank. It was Jackie at Lead Bank, and we got Fast Bank.
Yep.
And that's not the way it should be. Just because I know how to work the system shouldn't be the fact that only people like Jackie and I get a bank. There should be hundreds of folks. There should be used to be that way in this country. There was competition, there was innovation, there was inclusion. That fell off after 2008, but it's coming back now. So I've always been agnostic. I think most people know that I have some Bitcoin holdings. I've been involved with it, put first money in at Solana. But in this particular situation, XRP is where I learned it all, and I want to thank Arthur again and David and Stefan. They were all there. Chris tolerated me for as long as he did. Brad, maybe not so much, but for good reason.